I want to start with a feeling that doesn't usually get named out loud. Not failure, not crisis, not regret. Just this quiet, persistent sense of being behind in life. Not dramatically behind, not enough to panic, just enough that it hums in the background. You look around and it feels like other people started earlier, moved faster, figured something out you missed. You're doing things, you're functioning, you're even growing. And still there's this sense that you're late to your own life. I felt this. And I know people who on paper have won at life and they feel it too. It's the itch you can't quite scratch because you can't even point to where it's coming from. Let's think this through. Because what makes this feeling especially destabilizing is that it often shows up in people who are thoughtful, self-aware, and trying to live deliberately. These aren't people asleep at the wheel. These are people paying attention. And that's part of what makes it so confusing. If I'm this reflective, why do I still feel like I'm falling behind? Most people assume this feeling means something about their choices. That they picked wrong, waited too long, missed a window that everyone else somehow caught. But what rarely gets examined is whether the idea of being behind actually makes psychological sense in the first place. Behind compared to what? Behind according to whose timeline? We live in a culture that quietly treats life like a race with invisible checkpoints. Career by this age, stability by that age, confidence by some imaginary deadline no one ever agreed on. It shows up in the 30 under 30 lists, the LinkedIn updates, the family dinner question that sounds casual but isn't. So what's next for you? And when your life doesn't line up neatly with that template, the mind doesn't say, maybe the template is flawed. It says, something must be wrong with me. Comparison is doing a lot of invisible work here. It's not just something we do on social media. It's a background orientation system. A way the mind tries to locate safety, belonging, and legitimacy. And in a world with endless visibility into other people's curated timelines, that system is constantly overstimulated. So if you find yourself thinking, I know comparison isn't helpful, but I can't seem to stop, hear this clearly. That doesn't mean you're weak or undisciplined. It means your mind is responding exactly as it was built to, in an environment it was never designed for. What I want to do in this episode is slow this whole experience down. Not to talk you out of the feeling, but to understand it. Because once you understand what the sense of being behind is actually responding to, it starts to lose its authority. For most people, this feeling doesn't register as a vague insecurity. It feels like an accurate assessment. It feels obvious. Of course I'm behind. Just look around. The mind is very good at building convincing stories out of partial information. Comparison gives it a steady stream of material. You see outcomes without context, milestones without process, confidence without the years of uncertainty that came before it. And the brain does what it always does. It fills in the gaps. What it fills them in with is timing. They figured it out earlier. They moved faster. They didn't hesitate like I did. But psychologically, timing is a slippery metric. The mind treats it as objective when it isn't. We confuse visibility with progress. We confuse decisiveness with correctness. We confuse someone being loud about their life with them being further along in it. There's also something developmental happening. Early in life, there really are timelines. School moves in grades. Skills build in sequence. Progress is externally structured and socially synchronized. So the psyche learns something very quietly and very deeply. Forward motion has a look, a rhythm, a schedule. Then adulthood happens, and the structure dissolves. The expectation remains, but the guardrails are gone. There's no longer a shared clock. Yet the mind keeps searching for one. And when it can't find an internal marker for where it is, it scans externally. How am I doing compared to them? Am I on pace? Am I late? This isn't a personal flaw, it's an orientation problem. Add the modern environment to that. We're exposed to more curated life data in a day than previous generations encountered in a lifetime. The mind was built to compare itself to a small, stable group. Now, it's comparing itself to thousands of edited narratives that highlight outcomes, not trajectories. So the feeling of being behind gains momentum, not because it's true, but because it's repeatedly triggered. And here's the part people rarely consider. The sense of being behind isn't just cognitive, it's emotional. It carries anxiety, urgency, and pressure to catch up. The body gets involved, the nervous system tightens. It's the shallow breath when you open the app, a restless energy at 2 a.m. when you should be sleeping, but you're mentally auditing your life. Once that happens, logic doesn't touch it very easily. You can know that comparison isn't fair, that everyone's path is different, that life isn't a race, and still feel the weight of lateness in your chest. Because the feeling isn't trying to tell the truth about your worth, it's trying to resolve uncertainty. The mind would rather believe I'm behind than sit with, I don't know where I am right now. You see, certainty, even painful certainty, feels stabilizing. Underneath the thought, I'm behind in this life, there's almost always an unexamined assumption that life is supposed to move in a single orderly sequence, that there's a right pace, a correct order, a normal timeline. Most of us never consciously choose this belief, we absorb it. And when adulthood no longer fits that structure, the old measuring tools stop working, but we keep using them anyway. So when someone says they feel behind, what they often mean is that their internal development no longer matches the external story they think they should be living. Behind in confidence, behind in certainty, behind in having things feel a certain way, having things feel settled. But you see, those aren't linear achievements. They don't arrive on schedule. And they often develop through periods that look stalled from the outside. This is where comparison turns from information into judgment. Two people can live outwardly similar lives and experience them very differently. One feels grounded, the other feels late. The difference isn't pace, it's authorship. Who is deciding what counts as progress? Many people are running a borrowed timeline. And as long as that borrowed clock is in charge, life will feel late no matter how much you accomplish. So when the thought, I'm behind, shows up, hear it less as a verdict and more as a signal. Something in your life has outgrown the timeline you're using to measure it. And that doesn't mean you're failing. It often means you're changing. Comparison sticks, not because you don't understand this, but because it has been regulating your nervous system. It's been answering questions about safety and belonging. Letting go of it means tolerating uncertainty, and that's hard. That's hard. What helps isn't trying to stop comparison. What helps is changing what you orient around. Comparison asks, how am I doing relative to others? Authorship asks, is this life actually mine? My buddy just came over to visit. You see, coherence is quieter than progress, but it has a distinct emotional signature. When your choices line up with your values and capacities, life may still be uncertain, but it doesn't feel false. When people orient around authorship, comparison doesn't disappear. It becomes irrelevant. They stop feeling ahead or behind. They feel present. And that's often the moment life stops feeling like it's happening somewhere else. So if that thought shows up again, I'm behind in life, try meeting it with curiosity instead of argument. What clock am I using right now? And does it actually belong to me? Because when the clock changes, the story does too. I'll leave that with you.